5 minutes. Now's your chance to either use the restroom or grab a drink. Drinks are allowed, just no food in the theater, okay? So now's the time. 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater here at Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. My name is Ivan Salinas, Programs Manager here in this beautiful space and organization. We are an organization dedicated to the possibilities of language. It was founded in 1968 by George Jerry Smith. And since then, this actually makes us a 58-year-old organization. And we are honored to be serving artists internationally and locally. It's all thanks to your support. I want to acknowledge our presence on the unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. We acknowledge the wrong done to the indigenous communities, and we recognize they are the original stewards of this land. I don't know if my mic is on, but I think you all can hear me. As long as the live stream is working right, that's all. There it is. Yeah, we got sound. Hell yeah. All right. Huge shout out to the Beyond Baroque team. We have Eric Alberg in the audio visuals tonight. Yeah. We got our executive director, Jimmy Vega, and we also have Genesis Perez in the bookstore and Anika Dueñas, and of course the cast and ensemble for The Sun Has Fallen by Tyler Neufeld. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Beyond Baroque has a programming series every Friday and Saturday. You can find events here. We mostly cater to poetry events. This is an epic poem and also a staged reading. And here in the Wanda Coleman Theater, we have multidisciplinary events. So after this event, we'll be on a brief summer break for 2 weekends. And after that, we'll be back with several book launches and a new repertoire of events that you can only find here in this beautiful space. We have a book launch with Faye Ikashimari, and that includes Miriam Gerba as well. And we also have even a sort of event that plays on the World Cup that is currently happening. And that is a group of poets that is doing a program on poetry and football. Poetry, like football, is for everyone. So yeah, I hope that you could see our upcoming calendar. You can visit our website at beyondbaroque.org. And if you are inclined to support us, you can do so by supporting our author this evening, Tyler Neufeld. We have The Sun Has Fallen, copies of the book for sale at the bookstore where you got your ticket. And we also have an amazing shelf of poetry of local authors and international authors, poetry and translation, fiction, nonfiction. So that's one way you can support, and you can also become a member. Memberships start at $75, but there are also tiers for students and seniors. And you get discounts on used books. You also get discounts on our merch, and you get into all of our events for free. So it's a great perk if you become a member and you are supporting the lifeline of this beautiful nonprofit. So without further ado, I'm gonna welcome our director and playwright, Tyler Neufeld. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I know there are tons of fringe shows competing for your attention, but I appreciate each and every one of you and each and every one of my cast and crew who made this show possible. I'd also like to shout out my table readers at Untitled Theater Company and Pablo from Brass Tacks, I saw somewhere, for helping me format this book and figuring out how to self-publish for the first time. It's been a really great opportunity to work on a style of show that is very different than what I would normally work on, and I really hope that you all enjoy it. Just now, I think I hear a wind sweeping in from a land far, far away, and I would like us all to take a moment and let this wind cleanse our minds and transport us into another world of rhyme, reverberation, and rhythm. Let's give it up one more time for these wonderful actors. Yes. And without further ado, Please enjoy The Sun Has Fallen.
Heaven and hell are no longer. Young ones got bottom ground. Looks as though they were ripped a hole in the sky.
Little eyes look up, the sun dashes down on their faces. Their skins are all crisp, hard to burn.
And they float. They float away in the wind.
To the graveyard filled with the people who've sinned.
Ghosts. The oldest and youngest child stand facing the storm, their faces wild.
Then they turn their backs from the bashing sun.
And they run.
Off in the distance, the ghosts sang and laughed. It was heaven that made them laugh like that.
But the living? No. They were still facing the sun. Disease and rot and the devil's gun.
They knew there was only one escape.
Off to the graveyard where ghosts await.
All races gray, all colors pale.
Flowing and fleeing beyond the veil.
Death was dangerous quite, but the only way to reach heaven had fallen away from her place.
Heaven had fallen, sun would follow.
Making hollow shells of people even more hollow.
And hell had risen with the falling sun.
The king himself, and he brought his gun.
The ghostly queen will soon have to fight. The ruler of hell, the day versus night.
Only one will win. It's too early to tell.
They're building their armies and training them well.
So choose your side, sun's bashing rays.
Or the winters that freeze your soul each day.
The church and its steeple.
The drip-dropping needle.
The hole that the metal had ripped in the sun.
The ashes that float as the wind howls by.
Or the graveyard filled to the brim with her ghosts.
Filled with the sinners who never mattered the most.
Off in the forest, a little child lay, staring up at the moon and the stars each day. Far from where the sun had dropped out of the sky, the child traced the path where the sun used to fly. The child was sad, and the child was cold. The child had grown with the forest grown cold. The trees had kept her their captive for years. They'd taken her worries, seized her fears, and tangled them up into one thorny vine, poking into her heart, digging into her spine. The dirt had crept under her nails and her skin. She felt she was rotting. Her breathing grew thin, and the cold, it was more than she could bear. The frost bit her fingers, ice crystallized in her hair. Every part of her body, now even her mind, felt frozen and broken beyond repair of any kind. More often than not, the child thought she was dead, if not for the thoughts that still ran in her head. But the child could do nothing but lay on the forest floor, always missing the sun, always wishing for more.
That day was the same, just the same as the last, when the forest child heard another walk past.
How many years since I spoke to a person? Is my mind playing tricks? Imaginary immersion?
The younger child came cautiously to the old, helped dig her from the snow, helped scrape off her mold. Raisha's eyesight slowly focused. The girl set a compass down. The white snow underneath her melted into long-lost ground.
Two things
She said, holding two blue hands, waiting for replies. A small rowboat is off in the distance, and growing in size.
A boat? Amidst the constant storm? An odd thing to say to someone who's been gone such a long time away. It was hard to tell just how many days and weeks and months and years having no sun to seek. She didn't know how to count cycles of moons, or read, or write, or play any tunes. Lowly born probably, but her memories were lost. All she remembered were stars, thorns, and frost. She was trying to think, her lips trying to move.
But Didi interrupted, telling her, "You've got to listen. You've got to come with me. Off to the place where the rocks meet the sea. If we leave now, we'll get there within just a day. I know the way out. We'll be okay."
She stood all alone, tall and proud, as the waves crashed below her, their booms ever loud. When she was a baby, they lulled her to sleep. But her own little girl, well, waves made her weep. She had never been built for the sea. Where had she come from? Why was she born to me? The mother wondered, but she loved her all the same. She loved her so much, she made Aphrodite her name. They were outcasts, both only child and her, and they lived in their cave where they could always be sure that no one else, insane snare, not a singular soul, would ever learn of the souls that her child stole.
Right from the forest, she helped them escape.
It's where the rocks met the sea on the cliff's jagged shape.
Exiles they were, the forest children and she.
They'd been sent out to die, be it by vines or leaves.
As the icy mist twirled, she turned and saw Didi race up to her with a new girl. She studied her face.
Still covered in dirt, it was awfully hard to find what traces of sin plagued the girl's body or mind.
Why had they left her to the hands of the trees?
She searched the child's fingers, her elbows, her knees.
But the mother found no scar like the other children had to mark the spot where they'd been the most bad.
So that no matter how long they lay on forest floor,
Always freezing cold, never wishing for more.
They never forgot the crimes they had done.
As they lay there, dying, tracing old paths of the sun.
Another child called Cam felt the opposite way. He felt terrible heat bashing down each day, and anything high was bound to come down, for the sun melted absolutely everything around. They had to be careful, and they have to be swift. Too long out on the dunes, and anyone drift away in the wind, turned to ash dusty and black.
Once you were gone, you'd never come back. The sun was unforgiving ever since it fell. Just miles above their city, turning it into hell.
Years of living under a shadow, always indoors, ever ducking for cover from the odd rain that pours. Every crack must be sealed as they light find a spot where the flooding red waters could flow in, burning hot.
King Baron himself lurked somewhere around, rather pleased with the changes he made to Cam's town. He was building an army with the people of the Yellow City. They had no choice, and the king did not take pity.
Some people, though, had not been discovered. They hid brother, sister, father, and mother. Just below the earth's surface where some moisture remained, so they didn't have to serve the king in this monstrous rain. Tiny tunnel dwellers hoped he knew not they were there.
Every time Cam heard gunshots, he was filled with despair and worry. For what if he or his brother Jack were next? His underground cousins, for the rest. Darkness was scary and lonely, but sunlight could kill. No one left the shelter, but Cam wondered still. What was the point of having to hide when such happy ghosts dwelt just over the side of the mountains, where the wind storms always blew? The darkest part of Cam's mind knew he could go there too.
All throughout the day, the mother continued to seek, scouring the girl by wake and by sleep, but still she could find no trace of the mark, telling why the child was cast into the forest dark.
Raisha had been brought to their mountainside cave, where she met the other children Didi had saved.
there was Amelie, blind, a scar crossing her eyes, for trespassing and spying things not meant to be spied.
The mother couldn't imagine how it might have felt to be trapped dealing with what Amelie had dealt.
Never seeing the moon or even stars up above. Only dirt, thorns, and pain, never a trace of love.
Just like the others.
Frozen solid from cold.
The same thoughts repeating as the child grew old.
It was a good thing she was safe, rescued here now, with other children to talk to and flower seeds to grow.
Although she couldn't see them, their blossoms deep red, the scents filled her nose and danced in her head.
Then Torin had been rescued, with hair black as night, with scars on his feet from kicking others in fights.
He fought his sisters and brothers, all younger than him.
The mother had to admit this was quite a bad sin.
But not too unforgivable, not beyond reach. Didi actually found him rather easy to teach.
All he needed was kindness, and not to be mocked for the slow, slurred, and stammering way that he talked.
His siblings were rude, but pretended as meek, yet they had no scars cutting from cheek to cheek. His sister's hair had never been bitten by true frost, and his brothers would never know how it felt to be lost.
The mother could not imagine how it might have felt to be stuttering, slurred, and unanswered cries for help. Later, he told her how snow filled his mouth, but he choked and he gagged till he could no longer shout.
In the cave, he was happy, always wearing a smile, and was soon friends with Amelie after talking a while.
Torin helped water her flowers and do her chores and the like. Only bred out his voice. She always said things just right.
The third stolen soul had a beautiful voice as well.
It was loud and rich, and it made the mother swell up with pride as she listened.
No different than her true-born child.
Laura was solemn, but her hair was wild, shockingly orange against a world of blue and black. It almost made up for the sun that they lacked.
Didi had found her near the edge of the woods, fingers still bleeding from her thievery goats.
White and red berries, the occasional fish. Laura had to steal if she wanted a dish. For her parents had died only in pox last year. The trees had taken her worries, her fears, and tangled them up into one thorny vine.
But Aphrodite interrupted in quite short time. Just like the others, she came to their new home.
Too close to the sea, but no longer alone. Laura helped gather sweets right off the kitchen bush.
And the mother caught fish from the tide's pull and push. They were all together now, in a safe place, far from the forest on the cliff's rocky face.
Still, none of the children liked the open edge of the cave, almost dead to the forest, but not fond of the waves that constantly crashed down below, that making big ocean sounds, washing all the way out, then coming back around. They'd smash their force again on the sharp, jagged rocks.
The mother told them, don't be scared. That's just how the sea talks. She was born in the village, just like the others, but they had no love for the ocean as did their mother, and having no son was hard, but the mother didn't mind it as much as the children all seemed to, always wishing for such. She caught them quite often, their eyes closed in prayer for the sky to give back what was no longer there. Oddly enough, she didn't think the children knew just why the sky had split in two. Sun or stars, day or night, or hot versus cold, or dark versus light, or that the sun was still in the sky a very long way away, but only a few miles high, so hot it could burn little babies to crisps. The mother received birds who told word of this. And now the sun bashed down on Yellow City's people's heads, all while her children slept cold in their beds. All of these things she didn't quite want to tell the children she loved dearly back from winter in hell.
The sound rattled the room, clambering against every corner of what felt like his tomb. The sound went down Camp's spine with a shock, reverberating while half Camp's brain began to mock the other part of his brain, the part that wished it was him, dying not by gun, but the sun.
And the wind could take him away, off over the hill, to the graveyard of dead silence, but never dead still, where ghosts could smile, dance, and laugh. It was heaven that made them laugh like that.
But Cam was tired and hot in the dark. His short life had been bleak and bland and stark. Thoughts rattled his mind. Gunshots rattled the cave. Enough was enough. The path was right there to pave. It would be so easy to slip through the crack, divided his family, the rest of the pack. The darkness would aid his hands as he stole from the rations of food and the water well. He would do it in sleep time. He decided at last.
All he had left to do was dwell in the past.
For hours, dreaming of hours ahead, Cam waited patiently for his chance to be dead.
Though his nerves were all dead, his muscles did ache. He wondered how many more roads he could take. His oar was entwined in its own little battle. The water, battering against the plain wooden paddle. Frigid were the mists, for which fell on his face with a splish and a splash, but his arms kept pace. Death had not taken the pain from his lungs either. Corey heaved for breath in this terrible weather.
Rowing next to him was a man called Sir Velen. He was only slightly faster, a known former felon.
He wished he was back at the Queen-shaded haven, the graveyard, be it filled with sinners and cravens. Under the mountain, that dedicated spot was the closest thing to heaven the people had got. Corey was sure that Relenius missed it too, as she stood on the deck looking out at the blue.
The wind blowing through her along with the cold, eyes flickering with a shimmer of gold. That's what made them special, for the rest of the ghosts had not one trace of color where they'd once had the most.
Corey used to have deep, dark brown skin, but now he was gray, sometimes clear as the wind. He let his mind wander, so he didn't have to feel his arms as they worked through their latest ordeal. The ship is almost there, Corey thought with hope, to that shore up ahead with its wide open slope. But as they drew closer, Corey soon realized that the shore was pure rock and greater in size than any rock he had seen on his side of the sea. It was jagged and sharp. Now, desperate to flee, he remembered to remember he was already dead. There's nothing to fear, said the voice in his head. But Corey couldn't quite quiet that high, sad voice who didn't want to die twice, that which wanted the choice to turn back around right there and right then, and float towards his home, fenced into heaven.
But he couldn't and shouldn't.
So, back to the task
of transporting the Queen to wherever she asked.
Tiring himself by these thoughts of morality,
a new shock of cold
brought Corey back to reality.
They wondered just what Relenius would do once upon that icy land, or who she'd speak to.
He noticed he'd been staring at the boat's wooden floor. His arms burned even worse. He couldn't take it anymore. He'd been about to stand when
the Queen looked his way. Her golden eyes convinced him quickly to stay.
Now both the ghost woman and one tired ghost child stared up. The giant rock stood terrible and wild, adorned thoroughly by poison jewels of ice.
Almost lovely did look the most dangerous spike.
Closer into the mist, Corey forced himself to roam, emerging amidst daggers guarding cliffs topped with snow.
The hour had struck. The shadows stretched fast. Cam was no longer forced to live present nor past. I'm almost floating already. He wore a more smile.
Sad he wouldn't see his brother for at least a long while.
But glad for himself. This had to be done.
As he slipped from the king, he heard the bang of a gun.
The king can't be far. Half a mile, Cam guessed. He had to keep going, continue his quest. Well, Cam moved through the carved underground crack.
His thoughts grew and grew. His little brother Jack.
Perhaps it wouldn't be so long until they met again. Maybe all ghosts were bound to reunite at the end. Or maybe ghosts felt time's passing or strange, like days in a blink, or seconds spanning a year's range. Felt foolish, whispering, I promise I'll see you soon.
To a young boy still asleep in a now far-off room.
All of a sudden, Cam heard someone ahead. Don't know me as a deserter. His heart filled with dread, holding one last food of ration and water on his way to the surface where the sun beat down yellow all day. Cam squeezed into a corner against the tunnel wall. Luckily, he was skinny and so folded up small.
A fisherman and a kingswoman passed by.
But Cam stayed still longer in case of keen ears or eyes. It had been many years since he'd gotten so close to the slanted tunnel's end. He'd forgotten the roast of the heat, burning air right into his lungs. Cam gasped for air. Dust choked his dry tongue.
There was no great wonder the people living here all surrendered to the king. They still had great fear of the ghosts in the graveyard from the tales they were told. That those shimmering shadows were evildoers of old, rapers and whores, sinners, liars and cravens.
Supposedly such, them and their black ravens. But Cam wouldn't believe it, for all that he'd seen when he looked out his town's darkened periscope screen. Were ghosts who were happy. They'd dance and they'd laugh. It had to be heaven that made them laugh like that. It had to be heaven. Cam repeated again. For if it wasn't, what good could death do him?
A small ship was coming, as Didy had said. Just one, ominous, bringing feelings of dread.
She could tell already the ship and her crew were doomed. The rocks were dangerous enough, but with only the moon and the stars above to guide their path, the ship would soon feel the rock's sharp, angry wrath.
hulking and cold, jutting out of the sea, silently ignoring every sailor's last plea. Giant, like teeth of some dead monster's skull, fighting the waves as they pull, push, and pull, and they crash, loud as anyone ever heard.
At this distance, the wave drowned out every last word.
The waves and the rocks with their daggers of ice. Forest children found it frightening, village children thought it nice.
The frightened child Raisha looked back to the ship. It was almost out of view below, and it seemed to slip underneath the water, back and then forth, yet always emerging with hull pointed north. Right where she was standing, her face now to the sky, ice tracing the path where the sun used to fly. Her dome view had shifted, now vantaged on the cliff, After stolen years on forest floor, her body grown stiff. The stars twinkled differently, standing was strange. Traces of heat return, and no trees blocked the range of her vision. I can see everything up here. The air was cold and crisp and clear. For the first time in a long time, the forest child felt free. She felt free and alive, if still scared of the sea.
Gracia still stood there an hour or so later.
The other children arrived to wait with her.
Standing on the cave's edge, as close as they dared, the ship weaved through jagged rocks till it disappeared.
The children's ears strained, listening for a crash.
The compounding loud waves made it an impossible task.
Only one by one, back to the back of the cave, they knew beyond shadow's doubt the sailors couldn't be saved.
The first ship in 2 years, Staggy's mother had said.
What a shame those adventurers had to be dead. When Raisha found she could look outward no longer, she returned with the other to her evening chore.
Mother was teaching her how to make dinner. After all, Raisha couldn't stand to become any thinner.
She suspected that she would soon tire of fish, but as of now thought it a wonderful dish.
They'd taken handfuls of leaves from kitchen bush and spoonfuls of spices to cut up and crush.
Creating a sauce to lay over the meat.
But the best part of dinner was always the heat.
The sun may be gone, but the world still had fire, whose crackles of coals and sparks sang like a choir.
She couldn't remember the last time she felt warm. All Raisha knew were the coldest of storms, and the vines and the dirt and the thorns and the mold, and frostbite and snowflakes and treetops and cold. Such memories stole Raisha's heat right away, though just feet from the fire, hot as sun in past days.
The other children laughed around her, seemingly unaware of the dark thoughts in Raisha, now distant and scared. But with one quick look into the poor girl's eyes, Diney knew she should answer her loud, silent cries. She walked over close, leaving Mora and Amelie, then gave Raisha a smile, laid her hand on her knee.
Startled, she looked up and smiled.
Sometimes kindness was all it took to crack the icy exterior around someone's heart.
It had worked with Torin, yes. That was a start.
The others concerned gathered around to help.
But then something above them, a scream or a yell?
No, a cheer interrupted. Then back on the defense. They looked up at their mother, who had quite good sense.
Quiet, she whispered, and the children complied, while the mother moved to check what was happening outside. Up the long staircase, left and then right, the mother went to learn the happenings of the night. Probably only a rabbit or a deer killed by a bear, or a lost scavenger receiving some sort of scare. Perhaps something worse. Maybe the villagers knew of her secret cozy cavern, gray stark against blue. So it was to the mother's great surprise when she found who made those strange yelps and cries. Her eyes missed them at first, but there on the grass, a group of ghosts stood, white and see-through as glass. They flickered and shimmered, just barely there, and the snow all around them made it hard not to stare at the queen. How she glowed, a perfect picture of grace. The snow under her sparkled. She was meant for this place. The mother then looked to a different young fellow with eyes sunken and soulful and bright burning yellow, stars they might have been, shining upon her now. His calloused hands stretched, and he furrowed his brow, then pointed at the mother, beckoning the queen. It was difficult to withstand the full force of her sheen.
Who are you? She asked, to call to the now frightened mother.
Truth all be, my choices aren't any other. I'm a village woman, though Long since disowned, I live with my children in our cave-side home.
The queen took a moment. Anything more?
Has the queen read my mind? Used my eyes as a door? My children, she stammered. They came from out yonder, the forest, but they're lovely. I've never been fonder of anyone else. Those awful villagers were wrong to cast my children out in the cold for so long.
The queen held up her hand and gave her comrades a glance. They gave her a nod. Will we give it a chance to meet these sweet children? They may be just right for the mission we're on to bring back the sunlight.
Of course, I'll go fetch them and have them right up. By now they finished their suppers and drained all their cups. Back down the mother went, on those click-clacking stone stairs, not bothering with volume, heaving in and out air.
Hearing the shore's sharp echoes, the children awaited, with knives in their hands, among other weapons created.
They let down their guard when they saw who arrived.
She was catching her breath while they tried to derive what had happened to the woman.
What had she seen? She hadn't been bloodied nor hurt. The clothes were clean.
But she had a peculiar look in her eye.
Not good and not bad.
She didn't seem like to cry.
Mother, what is it? Amelie asked.
Why, it's Queen Relenius of Heaven Since Past.
Raisha did not understand what the mother meant or what kind of message the newcomers had sent.
Jack had been angry. Honestly, he still was. Waking up in the morning all alone because Cam had left him. His only family was gone. Brother Jack thought he could always count on him. Somehow, he knew that Cam wasn't coming back. Whether dead or alive, he abandoned Jack. None of his neighbors saw him when he left, but the water well volunteers had reported the theft. That fact gave Jack at least a little bit of hope. Why would Cam take food if he planned to float far away in the wind, dust burned and dead? Just thinking about that hurt Jack's head. For a while, all he could do was softly sob. His eyes were puffy, his heart ached, throbbed, and he just wanted to scream. But that get him caught by the king with his gun and its barrel red hot. Jack considered the thought of following Cam into the unknown. The heat, safety be damned. But besides being too sad, too angry, and tired, no one gave him the freedom to do as he desired.
No one. Except the one you'll see next. Someone you'll never know when to expect. No gunshot echo to signal his appearance. And it's disposed of the guards who were blocking his clearance. Jack.
His voice was gravely loud, like a whisper that had been tossed around in a cloud, but had lost some of its divinity, smoothness, and charm.
The voice reeked of chaos and bloodlust and harm. Jack, answer me. The voice queried again.
The boy gathered his strength, stood up, and then creaked out a hello, followed by, sir? Jack feared for his life, and the room seemed to blur. Am I going to faint or earn a shot in the head? Why hasn't the king yet added me to his dead?
I have a proposition for you, boy. Listen here. I want you in my army. There's a spot left for prayer. You can take it or die. Truly, it's your choice. I'm not unreasonable. I give you a voice. But I suggest you use it. And soon, my young Jack. Because I have other options with things that you lack.
Lack? I lack Cam, but that's not what he meant. Jack made his decision and nodded his assent.
Good. Said King Baron. Good. He's going away.
I never even saw it. Jack really couldn't say.
Well then, kid. Come follow along. Learn how we work. See if you really belong in my army. He then strode out of the room.
The boy right behind him. Perhaps to his doom.
Since the sun had fallen, his first taste of outside, the deadline was awful, but curious. Cam tried to open his eyes. No, the light is too bright. Instinctively, he shut them to preserve his sight. Aimlessly, he staggered. The heat getting hotter. Cam was a desperate lamb to the slaughter. The food he hadn't bitten dropped from his hands. He couldn't quite say when. Cam felt a release.
Wind swept through, separated him piece by piece.
Calmly, he drew in his final breath.
All of him was gone in the breeze now. Death.
Death. His consciousness floated along in a string, each speck of ash acting a miniature wing, carrying Cam to where he needed to go.
The graveyard of cinders under mountain shadow.
Cam took a break and let things be as they were. He was non-existent, one might reasonably infer. But after a while, startled awake, he knew then and there were two paths he could take.
Of the head, a doom split the world in two.
Left or right? Oh, what should I do? He'd been asleep in unconscious perfection, not paying attention to some graveyard's direction. He chose to go left after a moment of panic. Please don't take me back to that awful satanic hellscape of a home.
He whispered to the wind.
Please, to the graveyard of those who have sinned. He turned over his millions of wings to the side to catch any help that the breeze might provide. Tilted on to travel the path first.
His soul ripped in two as his ashes dispersed.
A bit of him dashed to the right of the dune. A shelter on bad footing, a song not quite in tune. He had emerged whole, no longer trapped in. This tearing was not supposed to happen.
Off the griff went on the long way round the sea. Adults dead and alive.
That's the young soul saved by Daddy.
The rolling hills rolled while waves tumbled below, and grass eventually came to replace snow.
The rocks no longer lay hidden beneath their white blankets.
Like knives escaped from their sheaths.
Dangerously sharp, at least some of them were, echoing the old shapes caught in the waves' blur.
The living had to watch where they stepped for the rocks, brambles, and snakes, but they kept marching on faithfully toward their fateful next destination.
Where that was, though, was sort of an investigation. For Didi and the children stayed among themselves.
Rarely speaking to anyone older than 12.
But this range included a young ghost named Corey, whose eyes shone yellow in bright, sunflowery glory.
Is the queen your mother? Sweet Amelie asked the ghost.
Yes, Corey wanted to lie. A grand, impressive boast. No, He instead told the children, strangely opaque, "I know you're looking at my eyes. I know it doesn't make any sense to you or me, or probably even the Queen, when we share the same golden colorful sheen. Can we speak of something else, like where we are traveling?"
A mystery, said Amelie, deserving of unraveling.
But Corey, you've been with Clear Companions much longer.
Corey replied, "Yes, we've been over canyons, rivers, and oceans together, but they haven't said where we'd be going after the village of St. Snare."
The living children looked behind, now forced into remembering all those villagers who'd given them each a form of dismembering.
Children, hurry along now. Keep up the pace,
said the mother, and the children started a race, and soon they were up at the front of the pack, far from the heartless who marched in the back. Relenius was here, so brave Ratia advanced. I will ask the Queen herself while I still have the chance. Where are we going? Said the child, who never mattered most.
Considering carefully her answer, said the heavenly host. Toward the forest at the center of the world, not the forest your mother tells me you used to build.
A different forest? What could this one be comprised of, if not trees and cold worthy to be advised of?
None of the children alive had yet heard of these woods. Don't wander too far from St. Snare. The rule was understood, though it was never explicitly stated, for the dangers were great, especially since the sun had left the world in such a poor state.
The promise of this new forest, ever so peculiar, made the children run faster up even past the ruler.
"Come back, little ones," cried their mother, concerned. There could be danger ahead, she rightly discerned.
The Queen agreed with the saved children's mother. "You'll see the forest when we arrive. We have much ground to cover."
The children's mind gradually forgot the journey's excitement and came to accept the closeness and confinement of existing with ghosts and living with villagers who'd once charged them as fighters or thieves in the miniature.
Over weeks of traveling at a pace fairly quick, the growing army made it through thin and thick.
Wide open lands with grass both dry and green, trudging through shallow mud became a routine.
For those who would not simply float right through,
there were a few small patches of snow left over too.
There was only one lake and just one pond, which the army broke round in two paths with birds to correspond between them until the two met on the other side's banks.
They couldn't have gone over the water, of course, being thanks to the sharp, jagged rocks that they crashed against prior.
And even ghosts unaccompanied couldn't be flyers. Over waters alone, this is because ghosts are bound to their zones, their lives occupied, being the ground.
All those many obstacles and days put to rest behind them, the group soon came to their true test. Tears in time turned to crystals from dew. She could no longer escape the fate they'd sentenced her to. Arms bound behind back, she was helpless and weak, curled fists, torn skin, spilt blood, loud shriek. Years of excommunications. She thought it would never be her, but it happened. The worst thing to ever occur. The blinding pain and the shouts all around reduced her world to black at the edge of her town.
Just that one. Into the cold forest in a path full of dread.
At some point, far along, she couldn't be quite sure when, St. Snare's terrors faded silent, and though it was thin,
the thin light could be seen, an outline of the trees.
her mind was fully awake, working. Even the freeze now helped in her favor, for she no longer felt the lack of her thumbs. where punishment had been dealt. An idea quickly formed. To act while she still could. I'll follow the blood drips out of the woods. The fog isn't too heavy. I can still cross the snowy dirt. It was only a minute before she found the first spurt. By the sacrificial stain it left in the forest floor so dark. But that was always how the forest tricked its next mark.
Lacey never thought it odd that the fog seemed to glow. Or that as she returned and strode on, more volume seemed to grow. The snow became patchy, the tree branches thicker, clouds consumed the sky, and the cold wind blew quicker.
She continued to follow her own morbid, bloody trail while the pain crept back, and she soon felt too frail to go on. She thought, just over there, and that's a fine place to lay down for a short rest, and tomorrow keep the pace. Dead pine needles cushioned Lacey as she slept.
It was almost too easy. Children almost too inept. The satisfied forest slid its vines like reaching hands around the disobedient and outcast. Can't snare, fulfill demands. The thorns will be grown in a few weeks or soon, so give the child adjustments time for just frostbite and snow. Let the wounds on her hands form scabs that often cracked. Then open up her view above into permanent speckled light. Forever she be forced to stare only at the distant stars. The moon and birdless clouds trapped behind tangled wooden bars. Bury her in snow, choke her, thaw, freeze again and melt. Make her think that she is dead. Let's hear see that how that felt.
The forest was merciless and showed no clear reason to do what it did throughout the newly endless cold season. Poor child. Lacey had no hope for the escape that she so craved. She was right. Deity already left. She had no chance to be saved.
The sun-made mirage twisted his view of the far-off dunes and the dust storms that flew, every so often plaguing Yellow City, though
Camp Saul was screaming! He gave up in despair. But oddly enough, he soon woke up somewhere. His torso intact, his head on just right, rocks strewn all around him, and no sand in sight. There were two major problems Cam would quickly discover. He couldn't feel the ground. In fact, he seemed to hover, just inches above it. Cam saw looking down. When he glanced, nothing more than a dusty dirt mound. Where are my legs? Where are my arms? My body! My body! Cam's mind sounded alarms!
He screamed, sending creatures flying out of a tree.
At least he knew his voice worked and could shape reality. But this was no heaven, no happy dancing ghost home. Cam found himself completely and hopelessly alone.
Or so he thought, but another was spying from under the trees where the birds had been flying. Cautious but graceful, only 10 was the girl, and unsure of the stranger who'd flown into her world.
At a loss for the next step, Cam sighed and stepped forward. Perhaps the forest held answers. He must be an explorer. Another step on, bathed in a pool of cool sunlight. Cam could finally see himself glowing silver and white. So I've done it! I've succeeded in becoming a ghost! But he still wasn't laughing or happy as most.
Then there was the second major problem for Cam. The bit that was gone from his soul was his hand. After the bend of his elbow, his flesh faded clear, and though he was angry, he shed not a tear.
This was his own choice. So he took the blame. The disappointment, regret, and most of all, shame. Wanting to forget, he looked again to the woods. If he strained his mind hard to picture it, he could. The memory of Jack hanging from a low branch and dropping down, scared of the termites and ants.
That was before the war and the fear, before hell had risen and the sun was so near.
What a world he remembered. If only time could be turned, he'd go back to his home before Baron had it burned. These here trees were maybe the closest he'd get to the way the world was before the two magics met.
Cam neared an oak now and reached through its bark, which was rough neath his fingers, but cool and dark. Farther in the forest the trees grew thicker, still speckled with sunlight that danced and flickered. It was peaceful, beautiful, shady, and serene. That was, up until a girl jumped into the scene.
He startled and leapt back, eyes open wide.
Who are you? She asked him.
He glanced to the side. My name's Cam, he whispered, not sensing much danger. Just another frightened kid, albeit a stranger.
She hesitated a second. I am Barrier. I've been lost somewhere out here for nigh on a year.
The sun-made mirage twisted his view of the far-off dunes and the dust storms that blew, every so often plaguing Yellow City. Though not all the way happy, Rennie had to admit, he would rather remain spending his lonely, fateful hours in the safety of the graveyards, not taking ash showers. His true fate wouldn't come for a few days more, which was nothing really. Ghosts had infinity in store. His loneliness plagued him essentially at all times, though the sound of others' laughters ever tinkled like chimes.
The graveyard ghosts are heartily and drank their days away. How merrily they dance, forgetting all their gray.
The happiness was draining when it never ended, and Rennie was left by himself, only befriended by a 4-inch-long lizard named Cat. After finding her on a flower on his walking path, the ghost felt a slight breeze from the west, which was always a sign of the wind to follow next. Sometimes they were messages sent by the wind delivery, or bouquets sent by the queen in her endless chivalry. Rennie liked standing here, watching the birds and the scrolls on their lids, wishing he knew their words. The wind kept the ravens cool as they quickly flew, so they wouldn't melt and drop down as strange goo. The unpleasant thought caused his mind to wander to the several things and lizards of which he was fonder. At his best guess, it would only be a few days or so till his queen would be back and with new friends in tow. Fresh faces and alive. Rennie figured that'd be nice. So far, he had only met Wynn's arrival twice.
A shout from the entrance interrupted his thoughts. A dead wind came in. Let's see what we got.
Distracted, he hadn't heard the wind's eerie whoosh or felt the strange yet sensational push bound to happen when their intangible forces met. I'll pay attention next time, Rennie thought with regret. Once at the gate, he heard important information. He couldn't just leave to his own interpretation.
This wind had not been sent. This wind had not been sent by the queen, but by nature itself.
What could it mean? These kinds of winds usually set recent dents, but this one, much smaller. Rennie looked ahead. As he drew closer, he could make out a shape. Long, thin, colored white. An arm! Rennie gaped.
A few older ghosts chuckled. Another for the bunch.
Someone took it towards the mountain.
And the rest broke for lunch.
The forest was indeed different than the last, clouded with fog and familiar warm light of the past.
In the northern woods could move on their own will, for the cold forest had a central mind that had learned the skill of trapping children quite easily.
It didn't try to mask its evil.
The center forest was modern, the cold one medieval.
It was elementary, obvious, and overall uncanny the way the forest turned children the village was shunning.
But the woods in the world center had a unique method of twisting the way directions were presented in the minds of the people and ghosts trying to cross it.
There were branches tangled in patterns and moss lit brightly with sunshine practically parallel to the brown earth.
Casting an odd sort of spell. Weird. Long shadows ensnared. Travelers into a knot, and the farther in one went, the more it grew hot.
But the forest was stubborn and wouldn't let the sun destroy it completely before its time was done.
At the start, travelers were sure they were going the right way based by where the light was flowing.
But the air quickly grew neither lighter nor duller, only hotter, more confusing, the tree branches fuller.
Some trees had leaves, but the vast majority were dry as the sand beyond the middle forest authority.
The low-hanging sun sure as hell took the bait of burning any too dry branches that lie in its way.
Queen Millennius had a long-time traveler's advantage, maneuvering the group away from most damage. She scanned the forest with her golden eyes.
Strangely enough, Corey seemed similarly wise.
And found the best ways to carve her own path.
Correct lines were walked in the absence of map.
A feat achieved by shockingly few others.
But none of this was known by the children or their mother.
Raisha, Torin, Deity, Mora, and Amelie were having the time of their lives in the trees.
I'm having the time of my death, and with my new friends, practically siblings, we make 6.
Outside the camp one day with the 6th tuplet, they found a new way to give themselves a chuckle.
It had all started with a game of catch the branch.
When Corey made Raisha and Mora blanch, for they were the only two who had first witnessed what happened.
A branch was thrown.
The catcher missed.
Deity was running alongside Corey to help grasp the sticks and leaves that Corey hadn't real hands to clasp. When Deity tripped over a large rock in her way and fell down, which the forest surely wished she would stay.
Before she hit the ground, Corey ran with a sprint too fast, and before he knew it, he had fully passed not through to the place where Deity might have been.
But right to the place Deity was. In.
Corey had achieved the act of possession with no immediate acknowledgement or recession.
Even after they fell to the dirt in perfect sync,
neither one of them moved, not even to blink.
Unbeknownst to the observers, Corey and Daddy were fighting.
Not against each other, but against this strange uniting.
Their wills slammed together,
Or perhaps their souls,
without really
mixing or becoming
one whole.
It was incredibly uncomfortable and rather concerning.
They both existed a while neither concerning.
The secret to escaping these unexpected constraints, Corey couldn't move out or away.
Daddy felt faint.
The living girl couldn't control her own extremities, so she frantically tried to think up some remedies.
The body had now gone almost a minute without air.
And the other children were more than aware.
Off to fetch Mother, Mora, Amelie, and Raisha ran.
And Didi had enough left in her for just one more plan.
Corey was struggling madly like a rat in a trap,
while Didi sent her thoughts out like a snake to wrap around Corey's thoughts, his soul, and seize his attention. We need to work together, one an extension of the other, Didi half thought, half yelled to Corey. The ghost response helped to finish this story.
On 3,
Didi heard a voice echo up from the depths, and they both knew
3 was the cue to
take one deep breath.
When Didi finally inhaled, her siblings' lungs let air out.
They ran over to the fallen with a shout.
Frantically tugging her arms didn't seem to help.
For the pair would have to learn to move by themselves.
The frozen body somehow stumbled up,
looking unnaturally and eerily abrupt.
The mother came just in time to see them pull apart, both children pausing to internally restart.
Didi reassessed her sense of self and her surroundings, and felt the return of the heat and light pounding against her skin, which had previously been a deep cold as the forest where her siblings had grown old. There was another peculiar thing Didi had to admit. She felt hauntingly empty, but kept this a secret.
Never really held a sword before, much less a gun. Once Jack got the hang of it, it started to be fun. That scared him. How much anger did he truly have at camp? If he were here now, could Jack really, BAM! Alas, Jack knew that his brother was gone. This game of kingdom, they were both only pawns. His king was his commander, and Jack would serve him well. He had nothing to lose fighting for the ruler of hell. Despite the threat, first, the king had saved his life, and now he wanted only a blank mind and a fight. The stench of smoke filled the air. Jack took a deep breath. He got very used to it. And worse, the smell of death. Metal clashed against metal with an awful, beautiful sound. And here one must be careful not to slip on the red ground. Accidents were inevitable, most people not whole, but they shared pain with brethren, working toward the same goal.
Kill the balls brown, their mantra was.
He wasn't sure what false meant.
King's advisor made plans.
Jack just followed where they went.
Speaking of the advisors, some were skirting right on by, and up a flight of stairs toward the sun low in the sky.
Where are you going? What are your meetings about? The faintest voice in Jack's head's back yearned to call out. But it was dulled by whatever spell the devil had cast. His body tried pulling his mind back to fighting, and fast.
The head advisor caught him red-handed staring, and calmly walked over, swooshing the clothes he was wearing. With one simple sentence, their conversation was complete. Work hard, and one day you may sit in my seat. Said lips below beady eyes above marvelous works.
As the meeting room door shut behind her, Jack glanced at Lo. There must be many maps laid out in that room. A voice from his instructor called him to resume. And with his team of young soldiers in this round of battle practice, gun in hand, he worked on his aim and exactness. Before long, his eyes had become cloudy with glaze. He let his mind ease back to another long, blurry gaze. Don't know why.
Well, that's what I was just saying. Like, I don't know why. Why we play with
Oh, that reminds me. You know how you're running to there's they like shut down the streets in LA like once a month. Oh, but I was also saying, well, not. That was also happening. Yes, that is what I did. I ride my bike there. Well, so this one is from labor. But then there's also one in Hollywood. This is the one just and then the route is like just kind of down. This one is like 3 miles, but they have a longer one. Oh yeah. Like just you're trying to be so yeah. This one is like they close down. They're like these yellow sectors are where they close it for cars. So like you can like stop. But this one looks like pretty straightforward. This one's and there's like you can ride your bike, you can run, there's like boots and stuff, and then there's like stopping points. Yeah, we got food and everything. Like there's big city stations. Okay. you've gone far faster than me, also with all these avenues. I don't know. But I have had Vera, you don't have a bite? You don't have a bite? No. I was telling James about the sequel of the thing. You could ride a bike and he could run next to me like a dog. Wouldn't that sound so cute? Get a bike. Get a bike for Sunday. Yeah, it's a Sunday. And then the 6.7. The one this Sunday is free-ish, so when you go to time. And then the one on July 19th is 6.6. I know. You're talking about it. But you need a lot. I can't even hit a bike that I heard. Yay! Get him? That's what I said. I meant get him a bike.
Did mostly a full solo on Wednesday. This is the first time all the actors are in the same room. And so it's a little bit last minute, but it's like, it's going pretty
Yeah.
I've seen all the
It's hard to find a bike for some people. Because, like, I'm 5'2", I had to try every bike in that school. Oh, I'm glad you know the terminals because I don't. I just go and try them all out in case of if my bike got stolen, it just makes it just during the dark ages, we got stolen right out from my patio. Someone jumped the wall. So they How'd you get the bike? I got it. They like went over the wall. I didn't see it. I saw the camera of them coming up to my wall and like stuff on their jackets.
It's really exciting. It's very fun. The directing process is really challenging. Show or figuring out where all the ghost boxes go, switching seats.
No, I think he had like rope or something. Yeah. I think he might have. Because I went to the smoke shop around the corner from my house where all the trees are stable and like found the guy who sold my bike and sold his parts already.
But they literally came to me in a
Crazy.
So I just wrote down everything.
Do you want to read my message to Adriana? Yeah. Me speaking part one. You are allowed. I am very mature. My therapist is a healthy friend.
That was weird, but I'm glad that it happened.
I'm sorry.
So good. It wasn't this the best way at the same time. I'm so good at dumping people. You want to read it? You want to read it?
I know.
You may. It's, notice the funny gift we sent me beforehand, just about his epic conversation.
That's what got me on board. I still don't see my best. I was why you like hold a single thing like when I said like I have this like that.
Yeah. Brother, I'll make it. I can make you that in like stained glass or ceramic. It's like owning a frame from like a Disney movie, like a mystery. It's not best case scenario. It's never gone that way for me in the past. It's usually a lot of yelling. Yeah. Oh my god, imagine if I did it in person, you convinced me otherwise. He would have been like, no, this is he would have. I'd be chilling. I'd be so chilling. You're locked in right now. Yes, sweet. Actually, you're too locked in. I think if I texted Audra right now and I said if you call me like I think you did. I saw you. I know that one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Meanwhile, the conversation I'm having with the now this is That's what I imagine your conversations with like. I'd be like, yay! What if he's at that? No, you guys just made a Costco trip left by the door because you were too tired. And you have to figure out which Dusty, you called it. Come on, Dusty. You guys are moving way too I'm still distracted by this. Not that just the whole contact You see the contact ID press it? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And mine just has to be This guy's
my body's fucked up and I cannot just randomly pop my freaking like for eating
This one does. No. I thought you were telling us that you just got invited to
No,
Oh shit.
You're so smart. You're so smart. I can't find that on there. No, I can't find I know it is the sentence. Oh my god, brother, you I know it's time. I'm done like 6 minutes. I actually don't know why she said that. Maybe like kiss twice. Like I don't think that's appropriate. Whoa. Yeah, that works. Do I say how much you brother, away from mine. You're wrong for having ass. Are you still sending this? Oh, you did send it. Can I get like a pie? So I was in New York. Guys, this is a good
Oh yeah. Is that the one that's like
it's fine. Oh, I know. True.
Taxi probably does not seem.
Have you ever considered walking in a line?
The rear hoped he wouldn't ask even one more time.
Just choose one and follow it straight and true?
She tried slapping him, but her hand went right through. Certainly, I have tried the simplest of plots.
Well, I'm going to try whether you're coming or not.
No, don't leave me alone. I haven't seen ghosts in too long.
And thus, Cam was reminded how his body was wrong, ghostly and clear, not to mention my arm. For now, he felt fine, but his mind sounded alarms. All right, we'll go together. We'll have more of a chance of escaping this horrible foresty trance.
Cam began pacing in a fearful cat fashion when he allowed his mind to begin to imagine a distinctive look of worry spread on his face as he thought of spending day after day in this place.
So off they went in a hopefully brand new direction. Cam and Maria both doing inspections.
One for danger that may lie in their wake,
and one making sure that they stay walking straight.
They began to speak and reminisce of their pasts. As they walked on and on, they became friends fast.
And miraculously, after 3 days of wandering, came an opportunity no one should be squandering.
A sign of life! Maria hadn't seen that in a year, not counting the ghost boy she chanced upon here.
There were hoof prints, horse and dog dung, wagon wheel marks, and footprints recently stomped on a campfire's stray sparks.
The group must have been at least 500 strong, but the best part was that they hadn't been gone long.
Neither child, a practiced detective, at last they agreed the travelers were only days past. Now if only they had a certain sure way to tell whether the party of people meant ill or meant well.
But there were no clues left in the prints or the scat, so they just took a risk. But of course, that was an easy decision. For if they only moved on, who knew when another treasure like this would come along? They could, of course, follow behind at safe pace, then hide together if they saw an unfriendly face.
We are ghosts after all. Cam had to remember. They can no longer be hurt by swords, bullets, or embers.
Risha ran towards her mother, shouting out with joy.
Never knowing they had narrowly missed a lost girl and boy.
The end of the forest is now in sight. The air is hotter, the sun is more bright.
The mother sighed relief, then sucked it back in. Her thoughts were jumbled, her head started to spin.
Plus, we witnessed the trees clearly thinning.
The mother was afraid of what was now beginning. You're quite sure this isn't one of the forest tricks?
Yes, Risha said, you can ask any of us 6.
Then you'd better hurry along with your message to the queen.
Relenius wasn't surprised by what the children had seen. In fact, she only had her suspicions confirmed. And by the end of the hour, every person had learned that their days of travel were almost at end. Once out of the forest, then round just one more bend. They would come to the desert which everyone trusted, for all knew that no one could pass unmolested by the terrible heat, windy ash storms, or sand.
Even those from the north could understand.
A halt was soon called, and enforced with trumpet sounds. The company built tents, took stock, and tied their hounds. Then the queen selected some from her knightly division, and sent them south on a fact-finding expedition.
Where have we emerged from the dry, twisted trees?
How far is Yellow City?
Which way blows the breeze?
Where inland can we travel whilst avoiding kingly detection?
Do the tunnel people really show or cause affection?
This was likely the most important of the questions, for recruitment of the underground was their intention. The departed knights were sent off with quiet cheers. One could never be too careful. The king may be near.
Raisha stared out at the old ghosts and started to wonder whether they'd have any luck searching for entrances under, or if these hideouts and strongholds were even still alive.
But the knights had gone, forever lessening the troops by 5.
The king stared down at his sprout of flat mouth, and his head swarmed ideas of maneuvers and traps. Drawn on the chart were various lines and troops. But which way were their trained out troops? It was unfortunately true that he spread them out thinly, but this could be never known by the enemy. As time moved and people died, they would only get thinner. The strategy lie hidden somewhere that he'd make him a winner. Don't let the enemy know your weaknesses or numbers. Attack while the queen wakes in her foolish slumber.
My king, I beg your mercy, but you must make a decision. Military strategy like this requires a high level of precision. Precision, my lord, requires much time. With that time, we can move to a victory must supply.
The king turned his head and growled. He did not like to be rushed. The small man across the table immediately hushed.
Then the advisor looked into eyes framed by burned flesh and said, "I'm sorry, my king. Let us begin fresh. You can command your army toward one of 3 places. Your Highness, please watch the map where my pointer traces. You're far too few to split them all in half. Standing up with a groan, he drew his lines with his staff.
It landed with a bud on the king's precious chart, and left a hefty dent in the royally commissioned hall. The small mountain fortune out of the cave, like all its names. Painted ghosts, surely remote from their painted graves.
You could go at first. Made Queen Relanius a sanctuary, behind mountain shadow, fenced in by cemetery. And kill them all at once, with your magic gun. Then travel wherever you'd like, in your land of hardest sun. A perfect plan, read securely. An attack, an ambush.
The king gave him a look that told him not to push his own opinions or plans too far into his ruler. What else to get a punishment that was rather crueler than what the king would do to even his peasants?
Or we could go right to Saint Snare and those villagers, kill them with swords. Why, we could be villagers, bribe them to follow with a warm, simple promise. It must have been years since they felt the sun's kiss. We'll march back to the tunnels, down in a swoop. You, me, our army, and newly gained troops.
The king was silent as he mulled over his choices, keeping his thoughts decidedly separate from the advisor voices.
Or, his right-hand man took the chance to continue. He could consider moving to a quite different venue and use all our forces to look for tunnel entrances first. We'll find every hideaway and quench all their thirst. Cure them of heat and hunger, like you did for the others. Have them join your ranks with their sisters and brothers, and march with your army of tunnelers and the rest on to the graveyard or Saint Cyr. Perhaps this plan.
No!
Yes.
No, he thought. But ghosts provided a necessary advantage in search for the tunnels, as long as it was granted that they lift their hardest and use their translucent skills to walk not just over, but right through the sandy hills. In no time at all, he'll find every entrance.
My king. My king.
And the devil came to his senses. Alert, but annoyed, he stepped daggers at his first advisor. They were alone in his tent, so all would be none the wiser. The meek man, hard ready to suffer a mishap. Why are you salty? I'm the king! Oh yes. His hands were rapid.
My king?
He hatched plans and plots and answered with his work.
Which may I bless with your royal stamp and send out a royal. Plan number 1, or perhaps 2 or 3.
Plan one was the best, the king had to admit. They go to the graveyard, his magic bullet would fit. Ever so perfectly right between the right spit below the eye. The queen.
She was standing alone, surrounded by tangle, when the queen approached with no strategic angle. Even the strongest and most beautiful of leaders were not perfect in planning, nor were they mind readers.
Father, why are you staring so?
I'm sorry to say, but I find myself caring no more about this mission. My heart yearns to go back to the safety of the caves with all my young pack. There was no use in quoting truths with sugar, she thought to herself. But several moments it took her to look back up at the queen. Thankfully, her yellow eyes were gentle and kind, if not exactly mellow.
I'm sorry the world has come to such a sad state, but your family traveling with us is surely fate. The ghost stopped talking, not because she was finished, but because she was unsure, thoughts all diminished to the realms of fear, concern, and uncertainty, and grief for the nights she had inadvertently sent out to exile in a desert for all time. She'd never forgive herself for her horrible crime.
It had been a week since the knights were sent out, and 3 days since their return should have come about.
I know you're no expert, but she didn't mean it as a slight. Do you have any advice about these missing knights?
Needless to say, the mother was surprised, but composed herself and mentally analyzed the situation they were stuck in with as much as she knew. When she was done, she spoke plainly her view. I think that the time has come to stop waiting. I'm wasting time even standing here persuading you to get on the move. I'm anxious for this war's conclusion. So let's pack up and go and begin our intrusion.
The queen took her words into consideration, knowing sooner or later they must move their location. Thank you, but something is still far from my brain.
The thought of my children, it's hard to explain. It was like they were meant to be with the mother all along, for better or worse. The children's parents were long gone, lost to the past, where the moon on the firmament and the stars beside it were only half permanent. Those adults had never even heard of Queen Relenius or the war. They just lived a sad life, penniless, building, sewing, growing, and raising their kids. So at the end of the day, they could shut their eyelids. For the time they were frozen, time was frozen to them. Somehow, rather than choosing to grudge or condemn, her children were glad for the opportunity to be alive, on a quest, and to have a community.
We deserve a better life than the one they've been living. Queen Relenius started to tell about her own misgivings. As a mother, I care the same way for my child, the queen said.
A secret that had been known for a while by the woman across her. It could not be a coincidence that yellow eyes existed in only one more ghostly instance.
But Corey did not know. In fact, he was confident that the two were unrelated, not due to incompetence,
but because he had been told a bold-faced lie.
Which, of course, was understandable. The Queen's attempt to try and shelter him from the king and others whom they wished to harm, as of yet, it had worked perfectly, like a charm.
Corey was safe just now, practicing possession, which had become all the young one's favorite obsession. But today was one of the children's least favorite days.
For when the Queen saw them, she became enraged at the sight of them partaking in such a devilish act. She yelled, asking questions pointed and compact. How long have you been doing this bewitchment?
He'd never seen her like this. The sudden switch sent Corey off crying after a short mental wrestle, allowed him to escape from his latest vessel.
The mother noticed what the Queen hadn't in her utter shock. They'd been playing in a place with no trees to block the sun, but somehow they were not even slightly burned. Corey, come back, called the mother, not his, concerned.
And so he emerged ashamed, but that was no matter.
Put your hand through me.
He looked up at her. Are you sure? Said Corey, glancing towards the Queen.
The mother nodded. So he put his hand in between her ribs, right below the center of her chest. It was numbingly cold, but she did not protest, and she quickly came up with a simple idea.
When the Queen argued,
she cut in. You've a better idea? She lingered a moment, fearing she'd overstepped.
but eventually the Holy Queen came to accept a type of magic she always was believed to be evil.
Other ghosts suffered similar emotional appeals.
Possession was the most efficient method of fooling, so the villagers were glad. They could stop their grueling harvesting of broken branches and shade banner weaving. By the end of the day, they were set to be leaving. Every living and dead were assigned as a pair, and thankfully, there were still many ghosts to spare. The mother had thought she and the Queen would be united. At the prospect, she found herself almost excited.
But the Queen had refused until it was absolutely dire to be the ghost possessor a certain person would require.
He heard every whisper and tall tale and rumor. The ghost who claimed his kingdom like a tomb. Living in death and cowering in fear of a king they had no idea drew near. With his army behind him, gun on his hip. Hatred in his heart and lies on his lips.
And lastly, the vast power of the ever-burning sun. They arrived at the graveyard prepared for some fun.
King Baron would never learn the young ghost's name, who'd seen them approach first, but needn't hold shame of not being able to warn the others in time, for she fell victim too to the king's heinous crimes. Nothing the ghost could do would have saved them from bullets, dark magical in nature. They had no weapons but fists, which did no harm to those still made of flesh, meat, and bones. Even then, the only left behind were children, old crones.
The only positive was that the battle was no true loss, for their queen and knights were gone, way up and across the world, far, far away, creating a real army of their own. The villagers of Saint Snare, their numbers had grown to twice the size of the king's, mirroring his tactics.
faces of every ghost. One final reminder that they did not matter most.
They soon realized that they had no protection. Their bullets whose effects spread like an infection.
True invincibility from where each projectile met its mark, whether embedded in the spirit's head, abdomens, or hearts.
The king and his soldiers smiled whenever their bullets struck. Their victims vanquished into a realm no longer stuck, existing and milling about, doing whatever they did, being carefree or happy in the graveyard that they hid.
The echoes of every shot compounded like a drum, entrapping and tortured bitter into a low thumb.
The king was sure the sound would be heard for miles of the lands or the empty man, woman and child.
Second, we look to the ghosts beginning their defense. Smart ones knew escaping made very little sense. They smoothly inhabited the bodies of their assaulters, maneuvering around all the gravestones and grave altars.
Men on each other, every kingsman soon turned. For the living, magic bullets did not evaporate, but burned. Dark, bloody fires bloomed out of their heads. The dirt became slick with the liquid they bled.
But active possession was much tougher than it might seem. For the Kingsmen resisted and eternally screamed. Every early when the first notes entered, their bodies and minds where their beings had entered. Yet it was enough to give them the hope of a chance of beating Hell's army in their deadly dance. But the guns had soon vanquished simply too many, and possession was too tiring and difficult for any.
Finally, we've arrived at the last stretch.
Jack was half hidden in a corner when he felt his bones rattle, in frantic fear of taking lives for losing his own. But he would do what he must, always loyal to the throne. Jack had been cornered, but still his hands quivered.
Ghost at his barrel's end, compelled shiver.
Jack took a deep breath, fingers brushing the trigger, waiting for his courage to grow just a little bigger.
That moment did not come quickly enough.
He said, "Move and I'll shoot!"
But the king calls back. Do it now, said an evil, rough voice from beyond. Do it with fear and growth that comes upon. Vanquish it immediately. But what is this good for? Remember your training. Or do you need more?
Fresh was frozen, now not in fear, but in fascination, watching the king painfully pester his young military ration.
The living boy looked across into the dead one's eyes, and found his counterpart to be of similar size. Cannot kill someone about his own age with the simple misfortune of his graveyard-shaped cage. He was fighting those who, with brilliantness, had not deemed worthy of fighting. The thought of committing murder was really rather frightening. He felt that his morals must somewhere draw borders. He consciously decided to disobey the king's orders.
Even given ample time, but the boy had not yet shot. The king's hellfire rage grew. This inept recruit would not be right here and now. Traitors deserve no grace. They are to grab the boy's gun and swoop it at his face.
To repay him for his mercy, Rennie tried to save the boy, but his ill-thought-out ploy only served to annoy the king in the final moments of Rennie's afterlife.
The bullet tore through his heart like a hot, searing knife. And for Jack, the wounded from his boss felt like fire.
This won't hurt him, he said.
The devil was a liar.
Oh, but they had failed, but at least tried.
Exact same instant. Both children died.
Didy and Corey were faring better than most.
For possessions, as mentioned, was hard for these ghosts.
After just 24 hours already, two pairs had split. The burned ashes in the wind forbade anyone else to quit. There were sepal-shaped garments the villagers weaved, so the exhausted could separate and temporarily relieved.
Humans were safe and ghosts no longer had to hold on. They would switch out with another from a pool 100 strong.
Corey felt lucky. He didn't require there was no worry. They were running out of food, which was why they had to hurry and get to the warehouses that were said to reside all around Yellow City, spread out far and wide.
It was the time of the day when the sun should have been setting, and despite Corey's coldness, Didy was sweating. When the wandering band, that half-hungry entourage, came upon a delight that was not a mirage.
Up ahead stood a particular large dune, and the sand in front of it was perfectly immune to the desert's uniformly photon bombardment.
Not long after their arrival was their secret compartment, found and uncovered about the pure irony.
The entrance was newly discovered, and not by the king's tyranny. A battered-looking wooden door under a layer of sand was opened up at once by the queen's royal command.
Sadly, the opener had to have the physical ability to lift the hatch because met with instant hostility. The man with the job of opening the only door near
was instantaneously impaled by an incoming spear.
The people of the tunnels were never not expecting an attack from the king. They were famous for deflecting the unceasing offers to join his side of the war.
He took gunshots to death for joining his corps.
The emotionally tender tended to the man dying, but the queen knew there was no time for moisture or crying. She herself went and stepped up to the dark entrance and showed her light presence to the mole-like independence.
Person who thrown with Jektow's eyes just for sinking. First, he disgusted. How could the queen be way over here and not off at the graveyard where she'd been for years? Could this be an elaborate trick by the king? Were there traps just outside waiting to spring? Perhaps they wanted to stop the frightened guard. Options 9 flashed quickly. He was thinking rather hard.
You needn't be afraid, said she, downly abandoned mine.
The shadow stepped forward, his edges now more defined.
It is I, Queen Valenius, of heaven since past.
Another step forward, his face was seen aghast.
The guard bent his knees, bowed down low, then professed his loyalty to the queen upon the bed. I'll need to ask to gain permission from our superior, but you will all likely be able to come into our interior. Food and shelter isn't much, but we'll do our best. Do not want to be caught by the damp, stressed, robes that find claw, flesh for protection. Take this hospitality as our people's goodwill gesture toward helping you onward to being an outlaw.
His tone implied that he'd give Yellow City a wide berth.
That was where the queen hoped that he would be wrong. And though she would play nice, she would not prolong her new plan, which seemed to only correct a course of action. If she could manage to convince and extract even a fraction of these tunnel dwellers, having them possessed and armed, would increase their chances of bringing the king harm.
Just a few minutes later came his decree of approval for their troops to begin their outward.
The tunnel soon became thankfully cool and sparsely lit, with sunlight flowing in from the tiniest of slits.
This system was more complicated than the visitors realized. The whole scale of the tunnels was a quite different size than could be imagined by anyone who didn't live there. Even then, some tunnelers were untraveled and unaware, for there were many false ends built. The king tricked and blocked wherever he and his gun on the doors came to knock.
It was dark and scary down here, and Corey was frightened. He preferred up above, where the air was naturally light. He felt all alone, though Didy was right behind him. But At least he enjoyed the touch of the rock on his lips. Whenever the tunnels narrowed and became very tight, he even had to bend down and adjust his height. For his ghostly form could not pass through the rock, not until it was very thin with a section unlocked, so small, which could certainly have come in. If the group was not so soon back up to the sandy land on their way to the capital of desert isolation.
First, they needed to convince the underground nation. When they'd gotten down further into the tunnel's bowels, the queen easily drew all attention and made her avowals of their need for more soldiers and the happenings up above, and found it was not true that they still all owed her love.
Few were bitter and hateful, but many were skeptical.
They were successful because the tunneler's logic was susceptible to the argument of the safety provided by the ghosts and the temptational offer to go where almost none of them had been.
Up above. It was scary, but at least new.
Corey demonstrated on how he could go through.
Leaving was less flashy, more tactically sensible, to those who'd been above for reasons compensable. They had gone under cover of handcrafted shade, brought back fish, plants, and water to the place they all stayed.
Now, they could take revenge with fear of death minimized.
To the skill level of their ghost possessors individualized.
The queen couldn't take all those who volunteered. Even as they funneled out, there were more that appeared from previously unseen and unnoticed crooks and crannies. Nooks and nooks. A village man even fought off one with a few jabs and hooks, because the mystery man tried to kill him to secure his own spot in the army, an issue which was very soon forgot. Amidst the chaos of possession and abrupt change of scene, once walking, the renewal of silence to some was serene.
Others couldn't choose whether the brightness or openness with the newfound heat gave them happiness or hopelessness.
Hard not to feel any trace of pity when the new arrivals looked at the state of the city. They'd come for a fight, so entered nevertheless, every ghost prepared, every human possessed. The queen's people's faces were set in stares.
With their forces combined, the fight would be fair, for the king had only his zombies and cronies of liars and sellouts and losers and phonies.
The poorest of poor who were joined to survive, and had been robbed of their souls and moved like a hive.
They carried out the king's orders in every last whim.
Needless to say, the queen's party was grim.
From behind every building, they expected to run into a zombie or kingsman, or more with their guns.
Corner after corner and road after road were devoid of devils. This did not bode well in the two gut-soaked hearts of any fused beings.
This emptiness was all they expected to be seeing.
Finally, after hours of suspense, filled searching, the wandering souls thoroughly tired of perching on rooftops far too close to the Earth's star for comfort.
Millennius decided the war likely could not wait first. Then tomorrow it was about time to unfold, when she chanced upon entering a place surprisingly cold.
Or at least cool enough not to immediately kill the humans' bodies when they were no longer filled by the souls of the ghosts.
And it was directly under the sun, only miles of air tearing them asunder. It was obviously a deed done by the king's magic, but to not take advantage would be a mistake. Tragic.
Thus carefully they entered and now separated and rested.
Especially the dead, becoming reconcentrated for the battle that may well take place on the morrow.
Lying down alongside them with the bodies they borrow.
All but a few special children fell right to sleep.
Not only because they gave them the creeps.
No idea what tragedies below the tomb took place. They set about to look around this new space.
They had explorers' hearts, but like the knights who were lost, they had them even before they'd escaped from the frost.
4 young souls allegedly climb a flight of stairs with no ghostly protection and their mother unaware.
Children passed room upon room full of weapons as they ascended story after story towards the heavens.
There were several rooms whose doors stood ominous, with ugly locked handles, their contents anonymous.
Even hell, unlocked rooms even held their fair share of horrors.
The bloody floors didn't exactly faze the explorers, as they had been through their own tribulations.
But the instruments of torture exceeded expectations beyond what their little minds had ever imagined.
Only Raisha had dared to really stop and examine the illustrations of proper plane inflictment techniques on the walls next to Iron Maiden antique.
Eventually, they found themselves at the very, very top, with the sun there above, and a secret that stopped the sun from crisping them up right then and there, for their time in the forest had made it quite rare.
Fullness was compacted and stored up inside these unlucky, lucky children, and released and supplied them enough coolness to exist on that roof.
For just a few minutes to play or to goof around as kids do. They had other intentions.
Like examining the king's awful inventions, crowning the building that must be the king's palace, sprawled a machine built with deliberate malice.
Near the sun's powerful magic they captured.
The miniature magic bullets it manufactured.
To the children, the part that took the most interest were the glowing levers and nose and buttons and things, not the big glass tank that was glowing bright red.
Which was fortunate, or else they might well be dead.
Nora almost pressed a button, but then chose a lever and blew. She pulled it and said, "I wonder what this will do."
Torn shrugged. I have no idea what it's for.
Soon the children didn't want to play with it anymore.
No one had realized until a little while later that for the world they could have not done a service greater.
The knights did not answer. They were trying to beat the king the last way left. Gains of mine.
Chuckle rose from the devil's throat. He played kind in order to most efficiently get what he wanted. Because sooner or later, he would vanquish these haunted beings who had stupidly gotten lost in his land. He advanced the conversation, keeping the upper hand. I actually employ a quite simple method. A magic that keeps you away from the deathbed.
One of the ghosts stirred.
Most likely the weakest.
The king internally smiled. The soul would be cheapest. Of course, you need not any protection of temperature, but I know another magic I can sell you.
If you the bird man was not bluffing, it was a genuine offer.
You could always use more in his metaphor offers.
I can give you immunity to this magic ammunition, and every one of you can be offered a position as a Highland officer among my loyal ranks. All I would need is your soul in my banks. He gave them ample time to consider this proposal, and he prepared his ears for the inevitable disposals.
Following one night's almost invisible hesitation, he moved on to round 2 of his on-the-fly operation. The niceties were complete. They'd never be able to play. They'd not been offered a chance to live, be it under his reign.
That's 1 through 4 likely knew what was due. But the magical shooting cage kept them pursuing other more tender moves, like a skunk north or east. The king's plan was the only left for these deceased. His mind crawled happily at the torture to take place. But that level was level 3. First, the ghost must face a round of interrogation using words voluntarily. And although they would lie, though it was not necessarily a bad thing to the king, who had particular skill picking apart the truths, falsities, and truth. The thought crossed his mind that they would think it below him to utter a false word and remain silent. But he showed them the capital punishments he had in store still to deal.
That was the one thing sure to get people to sneer. How many men make up Releni's troops?
What numbers of peasants ride behind in the group?
Where is the queen and her new army now?
The knights did not answer.
The king wondered how many were questions before scales tipped. The answer was 5. He practically whipped his gun from his holster and shot it. He was likely to speak. And watched his companions' faces at once go weak.
Number 1, 2, and 3 turn their heads to watch,
and their ears to listen as the translucent blotch grew larger until it swallowed the screaming man entirely.
Ah! This must be the first time they'd seen the king's undeniably powerful weapon, which he stored back on his head. The ghost who'd not viewed the tragedy let his head slip back to the front, eye to eye with the devil.
it was time to move on to the worst and final level. The fourth ghost was now third, but his successor lacked his bravery.
Sir Velen was considering selling himself into slavery, but his honor, which had always been his strongest asset, would not let him fall into this obvious trap set by Satan himself, so he both kept his mouth shut.
The questions were asked once more in order, but
And yet things differently when a gun is held to it.
the face of evil stared down at the ghost who fit. His answers a betrayal to one succinct sentence.
For this he surely owed the queen a life of repentance.
So the enemy is already at my gates. I hope they met the full extent of their ambush fate. He thankfully had foresight to capitalize.
Sir Velen was correct when he rationalized that the king had prior worked their arrival out for himself. Still an opportunity to lie, remain stealth. This one truth I gave will guide the man to believe me when I tell him his truths, the lies I conceived.
What did you believe from before moving towards my city? He moved his gun to each swear a reminder. No pity.
It was his turn again, that weak man.
His voice squealed, "The tangled forest!"
To the devil, it sounded sweet as a horse.
But somehow soon the dead man had himself under control.
He'd have to find new ways to break open his soul. The angry king moved on. The questioning was replaced.
The knight gave a lie beautifully told but bold-faced.
Once that ghost was vaporized, he continued to the next. Another round later, he had as much as he could expect.
Half the information from the old ghost with a shout.
And half gleamed from the parts that they all left out.
There was one weak and one mediocre knight still enduring.
The devil shot the mediocre, then began assuring the last ghost that there was no one around to judge him for selling out. He waited for the bunch.
Shockingly, Sir Velen held his last bit of honor, even knowing his coming fate, that he'd be a goner.
So, the king raised his own for the last time in a while, when he noticed the contrast between this and the other times since they had fought. The magic that reloaded so fullest had expired.
That instant, some miles away, a lever was pulled.
Over shortless the choices the king thoroughly knew. Stunned by the lack of teleportation.
Sir Velen's mind seemed to have, Satan's mind seemed to have taken a vacation. Sir Velen was still standing there, silent and quivering.
The devil told a lie only he was capable of delivering. I bought your soul, even though you would not want it sold. I appreciate the way you betrayed your worthy lord. I can tell that your heart beats words. Therefore, I'm sitting here.
As he spoke, he felt the magic shield cage evaporated. His mind kept on turning, correctly extrapolating that this knight would fall easily for this placebo, trapping him in the army of the hell down below.
This be a lesson in my people's nourishing. The men in your squadron refer to be. He waved his gun around and passed his spell.
False hook, line, and non-magic sinker fell.
Noah's position was obviously fake. The king's men watching could not shake the feeling of something else wrong. The king did not act like this. They all knew how his mercy lacked.
They couldn't know the reason behind it was so magical, being insensible as the ghost, much more magical.
Too mentally occupied to notice their glances at each other, Velen focused on his own survival chances.
The king trusted his victory odds almost entirely. When he questioned his advisor, Red told him to lie.
The queen will never find the tunnels for which we've been searching. We've got plenty of scouts sent out and lookout ravens perching upon those dry sandy dunes, scanning for every door.
His questioning relented when he settled the story.
And so, marched confidently on.
The ghost never questioned his imprisonment.
Fool.
Two children entered upon a battle fully fledged. They glanced at each other, remembering their pledge.
No matter what, they would fight side by side.
Cam didn't even feel the urge to divide. But conquering the king was going to be quite hard when he couldn't even tell which side to be on guard against.
All the bodies looked blurred, moving too quick. Their uniforms stained with blood much too thick.
Even beneath that grime were a mismatch of colors. Dark red for the king, yes, but who were these others? They looked like common, everyday people. It's like we farm, fish, or pray under the steeple. Only half an hour later, he saw a face finally familiar.
Until a kingsman took it upon himself to kill her.
When that man left to go pick another fight, Cam and Career carefully stepped right up to her, really fearing being seen.
That was the weirdest part of this whole battle scene. People around them acted like they were invisible.
In fact, Cam's logic was impermissible. While it's true there were a significant flare, soldiers should have seen their faint outlines there. Where were all the ghosts he had seen through his periscope, playing in the mountain shade beneath the sandy slope? If they were not involved in our heavenly host, then who was the king's army fighting here at this post?
We're pulled in closer to look at the dying soldier.
Cam wished his arm was real again, so that he could hold her.
She shook, eyes scared, tried to keep in her blood. The dust underneath her nonetheless became mud. The long knife still protruded from her chest.
Owner hadn't come back, which seemed to suggest that the detour was busy back on the defense. Time seemed to pause. As Cam felt the intense, several seconds building up to her entitled death. Then came the moment she exhaled her last breath, and a ghost popping out of her immediately followed. The children's watching faces were surprised and hollowed.
Everyone knew this was not how ghosts were made. It could be done in the blessing of shade, and not complete with a worldly weapon like a knife. It had to be done in desolation and strife, and dark solar magic burning hot and bright.
You had to float away and then land just right. Maria and Cam knew this from shared experience.
Except for landing at their locational variants.
A moment later, they gathered enough of their wits to see this ghost didn't look like the dead woman one bit.
This one was a young man with a wisp of a beard who looked back at them with an expression quite weird.
Obviously, there was no recognition in his face, since the children were not from nor did they fit in this place. He didn't seem to have the bravery or smarts of Corey, the only child the queen brought from her dead inventory. "Come along with me," he said.
You could hear him just barely over gunshots going off less and less rarely.
Quick glance confirmed they would go along.
If they were with each other, they were not doing wrong.
The teenage ghost questioned them, speaking very quickly.
They noticed how much he looked tired and sickly.
He told them his own long story of travel from ocean to snowlands, rock, dirt, sand, and gravel, and of the interesting people they pick up on the way, excluding the number of those who fall prey to separation or heat, hunger, or just plain exhaustion.
Now they were all here, fighting these soldiers, Boston.
Because the two of them had no practice whatsoever in the art of possession, pre-deep and clever, to abstain from attempting anything with the living on their side. But since there were more and more living who died, there were more and more ghosts without a human partner.
Controlling enemies was more useful than being a martyr.
Two tiny travelers were instructed to watch what the teenage ghost considered a different top-notch.
He bounded over to a king's woman, letting off rounds of bullets, likely non-magical, that were making loud sounds. One more leap forward, and then he was gone.
Ammunition and a long knife were withdrawn from her belt, grabbed with her very own hands, and given to a passing queensman with no demands.
There were still several bullets contained in her gun, so the ghost planned to spot some good cover and then run to it, scope out Kingsman, and start shooting.
But the woman was aware of this, and she tried uprooting the stranger from her body. The children saw her limbs twitch.
Unaware
of the complex and repetitive switch of power within that strange
and two-party system. So the ghost, with all his newly gained war wisdom, seized his seconds of control and held the gun to his temple.
In those moments before death, the woman's hands did not tremble.
Once she was safely deposed down in the dirt, the ghost walked over again, completely unhurt. He explained to the children,
only one traumatized,
that this type of war was now quite demoralized.
Cam pointed out that none of them three could go and grab the gun that was still laying free.
The soldier nodded, but assured them it wasn't worth much, since when he had held it, it was light to the touch. That means it wasn't carrying the special bullets, the ones that can do their killing to the fullest. If you're hit with one of those, you die along with your person. But they're rare. You won't. Made the assertion.
he turned out to be wrong. They gave it a try, sleeping along in broad daylight. So they came upon two ghosts standing together with their backs turned.
Cam jumped into one, recklessly unconcerned.
But the rear hesitated, and in the time it took for Cam's unit to drop its weapons, Gur spun and looked. The soldier's eyes adjusted quickly. Then he took aim.
From that moment on, Cam's death was never the same. He had to act fast and set aside her coming grief. His new arm shot the shooter right through his red motif. The bullet wasn't enough. It merely dented the armor of the scary soldier with the magic gun that harmed her. Ferrier is gone. The thought threatened to take over his mind. But in order to possess, he needed all his wits combined. The only thing that Cam had going on in his favor was that the human under him was in a state still braver.
Having your body taken over was an unsettling thing. But soon, he found one arm could independently swing. The man quickly coalesced his thoughts to form a sharp attack, while grabbing the gun from his right hand to get his body back.
Cam was confused. Having not authorized his action, his mind raced again with possible strategies or distractions. Then he saw the Kingsman, who Ferrier had failed to master, pointing his gun at his friend. This was a disaster. Cam released himself at once from the human mold and never wished to see a man whose soul was sold.
Gunshots followed him as he ran down the road. He wondered what it'd be like to not have a moral code. And he'd gone on long enough to feel that he was first. This burned into his mind. It spun and reshaped itself into Jack's. He hadn't seen his little brother since he abandoned him and left him from under the cover of the tunnels. Jack was nowhere to be found here. Not as a tunneler, nor a kingsman, not another ghost clear. Cam deeply wished, maybe even assumed, Jack was so safe underground in what felt like a tomb. Yet his eyes constantly scanned the expanse of the city's yellow ruins on the narrowest chance that his brother was somewhere needing to be saved. He messed up before, but Cam still could be brave. None of that would be necessary here in this area, starkly empty of soldiers, ghosts, and hysteria. Judging by the sun, it was a yellow city center, and while many ran outwards, not many did enter. The king probably wants to keep the battles away, his fancy castle, and giant power display. Not sure what to do, where to go, feeling stuck. Cam had an unbelievable stroke of luck.
Stretching toward him 100 or so paces, came a man with the most hideous of all faces.
The boy hid behind a building shadow to become less detectable. The king's shadow passed, all the while firing bullets unreceptible.
He was alone due to his recent nerves. He walked right past Cam.
Made an inward decree that he would kill the king for the crimes he committed. Cam carefully crossed behind. No noise was emitted.
Devil made it back to the palace's wall, with unimpressive bricks and stones. It's still rather tall.
The Cam's assessment changed with just a touch of rock, and a secret spot opened a secret door for the king to walk right through. The stone reverted close and smoothed behind. Cam knew his own hand wouldn't work. So felt resigned. Before he remembered the simplest ghostly capability. He closed his eyes, weaving through with no needed agility. Inside he found naught but a well of stairs curled up to the hot sun that mounted to whirl. Cam quickly deduced that he needed to go behind his wall, a place that allowed no possible chance of being discovered by the king. He chose to look down with his stairwell rings. I cannot be seen. Cam, his heart pounded like a machine. Soon passed far away, the common room, where an ambush had sent many allies to their doom. Cam tottered once near the edge, close to dropping. He was getting tired, but the king wasn't stopping. Now, to revenge, Jack's face had morphed. But Cam's strong emotions were still truly dwarfed by the rage of the king.
That's Cam swinging up.
The footsteps had stopped above. Just one more turn. Cam stood facing the man at a half-open latch. Cam was yet unnoticed. The king was about to snatch the gun from his belt. The pieces fit like a puzzle. There was no time to think. The kid had to hustle. He ran up behind him and swiftly landed his jump.
No!
Inside the king, holding on to any mental bump. If the king took him out, he surely would be shot. Believe it or not, he held on long enough.
Duh!
The queen's golden eyes were great at sports spotting ghosts, noticing their pale outlines flickering quicker than most. So naturally she saw she believed was her child. As she looked over the edge, his courage was wild. Corey followed the king, a man completely unaware, through a secret passageway to a winding well of stairs. Relenius watched these events unfold in horror from the top. She looked around at her shaking team, assembled to stop the king. None gathered here were the precious forest children, who at their mother's request were already safely hidden, a feat astoundingly accomplished in the chaos of the ambush.
They heard the surprise attack below as they stumbled and pushed each other onward down the skyscraper, down stairs, 3 rows. Wisely, they had hid inside instead of trying to be heroes. Their mother and the queen herself had sought and found them after, in an abundance of joy, fear, thankfulness, and laughter.
Corey had been with them, but now was back in danger. It seemed only appropriate that she would rearrange her plans. She notified her rooftop soldiers that the king was near. There was a ring of possessed people on this final frontier, with stolen magic guns guarding the tree and its lever.
Everyone willing to die twice for this endeavor!
A small man, his advisor, was held captive with ropes, but for the compassion of the king, none had high hopes.
Lastly, there was the queen, with a plan very simple. She would wait by the door and possess him in one and then would move, hopefully give him no chance to start shooting. Next, he'd suffer Yellow City's most important looting, a magical disarmament. She would set things to rights. But how now would she, her dear son, Corey, play into this sun fight? The thought of him in mortal danger already was distracting. A mental fog of plague she needed to not be contracting. Her guard still didn't know of this worrisome advancement she'd been about to say out loud.
Just when by chance sent the mother a smile towards the queen, wishing her luck.
Emotion overcame Relentless, made her mouth stuck. So she accepted it silently and gathered her strength, waiting at the door for another few minutes' length. Listening for the soft jingle of the inner latch moving, she thought she'd heard something, but a problem was brewing. The king, of course, would expect some secret attack, but the time it took to open the door took the queen aback. Something was wrong. She walked herself through the door and found the king writhing around like snake-like on the floor. This was nothing new with those first time possessed, but she needed to get Corey quickly out of this mess. She jumped into the body. She was quite surprised to find that she did not at all recognize this other young boy's mind.
Now the queen and king were both equally jarred, in what each thought would be a battle with all others barred.
During the ambush, she paired together with the mother and used the same techniques just now to talk to this other. Stand up! Stand carefully! She mentally held, pushing against the king's attempts to have her expelled.
For longer than she wished to spend, the 3 finally finished the feat.
But another preliminary step needed to be complete. The intricate maneuver of unlocking the door latch.
Those waiting outside were unsure whether to dispatch any guards from their posts standing at the machine to open the roof access door to check upon the queen.
Things might have been easier if they had.
But eventually stormed down an ironclad and inhabited by
Double
the ghosts ever known in history.
There were no ghosts but mother and son before the system.
We had made by bringing the sun to hang
So close, so nigh.
They must have known the queen's plan to return to the sky.
Relenius couldn't tell if the boy was helping or hurting. In their attempts to control the king, the child was subverting all her expectations of how she planned this hour to go.
Barely even managed to grab his gun and throw it to the rooftop ground without the king instantly proclaiming.
The power in his own limbs with trigger, instincts flaming.
With his only weapon gone and surrounded by the enemy.
All except a stupid advisor we didn't care to free.
His anger built upon itself in a boiling point it never reached.
Cam's mind couldn't stand the touch of it. Its griefs and pains are both physical and ethereal.
Shame, pity,
The annoyance.
and both power magisterial. They kicked Cam out.
This was how it must end. There was no room for another. One of them would transcend.
The ghostly queen will soon have to fight. The ruler of hell, the day versus night. The seasons must turn, war must be quelled.
They built their armies and their people fought well. If his reign were to end, this is how it must be. Not on the sharp frozen rocks of the sea, nor neath the branches of either two major forces, or surrounded by silence of military chorus.
Not under a mountain shadow where ghosts sang and laughed. It was heaven that made them laugh like that. Not the trenches of the Midlands with their quicksands and mud. Not the streets down below and filled with spilled soldiers' blood.
This story's finale must take place under the sun. The king would not concede until the battle is won.
Yo, the frightened boy scrambled off of his rear and ran to the machine where he would not interfere.
Now, the devil no means to go on to the offense, let alone the lone lever. It was time to commence the greatest battle which the vast lands had ever seen.
The balance of power
Fluctuate,
in between the two great rulers of their time.
so too did the star.
The people united, watching and waver, be they near or far.
The skirmishes and shooting already slowing down below, halted as the people turned to see the strange golden glow.
Satan's side soldiers seem to understand inherently that none of their fighting mattered if the apparently great king could not keep their source of power stable.
The queen's side knew they must rely on her to be able to lift the sun.
Feat she could never do on her own.
She had to force it from the man who occupied the throne.
After just an hour, the sun climbed 50 feet.
None celebrated. Victory was far from complete.
The queen mentally slipped when she thought about the boy, a blunder which allowed the king a chance to employ.
Shift of the sun downward, bringing on an onslaught of heat and fear, slowly dissipated and forgot.
Millennius winced. She deal with the boy later. I must return. I must go back to fighting this dictator.
It was not simply a push of will against will, but a complex tumbling and turning test of skill.
Each attempting to surround and overtake the other.
Their spinning thoughts diving and ducking for cover, trying to evade the very souls being captured.
And the queen working faithfully toward her own rapture. The thoughts in her mind cracked and fractured like crystals were set to stab the king.
His thoughts were firing like pistols.
Struggling made time for her to find the right equation of offense, sun lifting, and of defensive evasion.
The king was trying so much to expel her. He didn't focus enough on the goal interstellar.
So inevitably, there came a point beyond return where good and evil this time would have to adjourn.
For the king grew weaker every moment of the rising sun.
With less authority than ever to hold her under his thumb. But just as the great power source moved closer to her home, the real heaven up at the top of the dome, she moved faster, wholly, fending off half-hearted punches. The ghostly Queen Millennius even had her hunches that the sun itself remembered and longed for its place. She looked all around, needing to savor and embrace her last few moments on Earth, while she would remain on the ground or at least a rooftop of her large domain.
After that point of no return, the magic started draining. Some color washed out of the world, erased like a painting. The Kingsmen were no longer bound by their magic contracts. They needed no heat protection, now that the sky was intact. But only about half of their souls each returned.
Not completely powerless was barren. His flesh was burned.
The magic bullets in their guns had disappeared through.
The machine beside the queen, with its magic clapper, sprawled on the roof, was nothing but an eyesore and a hump of inoperative, solar-powered electronic junk.
All the non-ethereal beings started fading away.
They were dead, and should have never been allowed to stay in this realm. This hollow husk for as long as they had.
There were many parties of fast friends.
All of them were sad. Possessed humans felt empty, but they couldn't tell why at first.
Those ghosts standing all alone would never be in person. They simply got clearer, till they didn't exist.
Some souls were scared, of course, but most didn't exist.
Queen represents camp for saving all their lives.
Faded fast, nothing. Sad look, spies.
Even in all her regained power, the queen found herself tired, but mustered up her strength. With the burst of effort required, the devil and the queen tore in half.
They're being split apart.
Those on the rooftop viewed the sight as a work of art.
Instead of stepping to the side as ghosts had done before, the queen rose up out of the king, thus ending.
She floated up, following the sun, and after her did glory.
Heidi and the forest children would always tell the story.
They watched from their safety place as their friends started floating. We all cried, said goodbye, sadness a moment.
At the same time, the king was dragged back to the pits of hell, though no one cried for him, or witnessed as he fell.
The scarred, burned body of a very unfortunate man collapsed dead to the floor in a time that began a new era for the world, a time of sweet relief. Nature would return to normal. Humans still felt.
The world was in shambles. With no ruler or ambassador, Yellow City's streets below had been through a massacre. There were dead and bodies broken at ankles, seen, bullet shells and nasty smells and blood pools left to clean. Never again would a graveyard filled with dancing ghosts. No bastards, thieves, or sinners who never mattered most.
Never again would an uncursed bird melt right from the sky.
No one would ever float again on the waves of health and God.
But not all left on Earth was boring and static. There were places left untouched, remaining enigmatic. Branches could curl.
Forests had minds.
Creatures substituted children now caught in their vines.
The queen stood sometimes listening at the steeple, invisible though, hearing their cries of
Lurking in fearful shadows, unanger feeling to keep those tragedies. Tragedies like sickness and bleeding.
There was an enchantment every morning as the sun lifted.
That continued to the fading hours, but the sky itself shifted.
All unsound to show the people visions in the night.
bears,
bows and arrows,
a Pegasus taking flight,
snakes, scorpions,
shooting stars, the bird of Apollo.
The sun had risen, the sinking of hell had followed.
Children's eyes traced the paths the lights now freely twirled.
And to them, there was still plenty of magic in this world.
Those of you staying through this whole time. This is our first time running through the whole show and the first time the whole cast was in Run Room. So apologies you stayed a whole hour later, but if you want to keep the party going, we will be going to, Jenna, what's the bar called?
They are not in this room.
They are not in this room. Let me look at their text and see what the bar is called. Otherwise, we'll be hanging out in the lobby for a few minutes. And we hope that you will check out the book in the bookstore. Brig, that is the name of the bar. So thank you again. Let's give it up one more time for this cast. And have a great rest of the night.
Yeah, we both want to grab
Well, these chairs for ants.